If you enjoy listening to inspirational stories from people just like us, facing the fear and doing it anyway, then you're in the right place. My name is Claire Hill, and this is the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. Hello. Happy whatever day you're listening. I don't know why that's funny. I've just had to really have a word with myself to get this podcast recorded because I've been so busy that I'm not as organised as I should be. And I was like, what am I going to talk about today? And I thought maybe I'm just going to go with the flow and see what's going on my brain. If you've heard and listened to stuff that I've done before where I just talk about random stuff, then you might still want to listen. If you're new to this, I promise there'll be some gold in here somewhere. I thought I'd just tell you about my week and how it's been. It's been quite wonderful actually, in more ways than one. I set myself up a little bit of a challenge. So I'm talking to you, it's the end of September. And a year ago, I had the idea of doing a group program, which has come together, and I delivered the first session this morning. The program's called Project Warrior Boss, and I have done a whole podcast on this when I first was starting to sell it. And I wanted to create a program where people couldn't hide or they couldn't get away with not doing the work that they needed to do. And the kind of program I needed, probably do still need, to be fair. But I pulled it off. I tell you now, it's been one of them journeys very similar to this podcast. Actually, I told you this was going to be all over the place. The podcast is a year old now. I feel a little bit like a fraud for saying it's a year old when I had so many months not doing it. I think I was really getting in my own way with that because I just wasn't being consistent. But it's funny, isn't it, how you decide something and you decide with everything you have to do something a certain way. But once you've made that decision, everything aligns and you're like, I am doing it. And very much like this podcast. The podcast I had the idea of doing probably about 2 years ago. And then it was something I just wanted to do. I'm just obsessed with podcasts. I love them. Bloody love them. I've just been asked to be on a podcast, which I'm really excited about. And I've actually been invited on to 5 others. Well, you know what? I'm getting myself all worked up. Why do we get in our own way? I'm getting myself worked up because I don't know the other people that have asked me on the podcast. The other podcasts have been, the one that I'm definitely doing, I listened to and I know them. So I'm really, really, really excited and honoured that they've asked me. So that's really cool. But the other ones, it's like, I'm gonna get in my own way, even though it's a real honour to be asked on somebody's podcast. So I need a little bit of accountability about that. But yeah, I'm gonna go and be on all these podcasts, which is very exciting. But I got in my own way thinking about being on this podcast. I'm all over the place. All right, let me start again. I had the idea of doing the podcast, and then I was invited onto Emma Isaac's podcast, So Creative Ways. And Emma is a very good friend of mine. She's absolutely wonderful soul. And she said to me, you should do a podcast. I thought, well, I have had that idea, but I sort of needed permission that it was okay, that I would have enough to say, I suppose. So I did the interview with her, enjoyed it so much. It's episode 52 on her podcast if you want to listen to it. It's all about flipping trauma, really, and how that story and actually what I spoke about on that podcast has informed everything I've done for the Vivid Club. But I started the podcast, No Rest for the Vivid podcast, it was published on the 23rd of September 2021. And it was 2021. We don't say years like that, do we? We say 2021. I can't even say years. So I did that, and I published the podcast, But getting from the point of when I first recorded the interviews that were the first episodes to actually publishing it was so long. I just kept getting in my own way. And then I had to say to myself, Claire, you've made a decision to do this podcast. You've made the decision, just get on with it. So once I'd made the decision about the day that it was going to be published and got my act together, that's it. Everything started to fall into place. And this is very similar to Project Warrior Boss. I just decided back in May, I'm going to start my first group program on the 26th of September. And then I worked backwards. So if there's anything that you want to do and you're scared, I mean, I'm absolutely petrified of doing my own group program. And it's going to be really funny, actually, because in years to come, when I listen back to this podcast episode, I'll be like, oh, I was really scared and now I've run it 10 times or whatever. I'm not getting away from the fact that, I don't even know if that makes sense, but the Vivid Club membership, I am so passionate about the community of people. We've just done a warrior workshop, actually, and so many of them turned up today. And I felt, sometimes I sit and think, oh my God, I've created a community of these warriors who are so amazing, like so amazing. They're all there listening to me. And then the imposter syndrome comes in. But with Project Warrior Boss, I made that decision and everything came together. And I had 6 spaces and I wanted 6. I didn't want any more than that. There was a part of me that wanted, I thought, well, can I squeeze 8 in? I thought, no, because it's not going to do the group justice. So there's 6 of them. And they were telling their stories this morning about what they want from the program. And it's like all of you warriors, you've decided, whether you're in the Vivid Club membership and you're listening to this, or if you're doing Project Warrior Boss, or you're basically sussing me out to see whether or not I'm any good. You might be considering one-to-one coaching with me, or I'm launching Pocket Warrior in a couple of weeks. And you might be thinking, I just need to suss her out. She seems all right. She seems like she knows what she's doing. But the thing is, I do know what I'm doing, but I'm still just a human being. I like the fact that I do this work with people, and I'd say to them, I'm not perfect. I'm not, I'm definitely not as organised as I wish to be, but I'm always growing, and that's the thing. I'm constantly growing in the right direction. I'm looking out for my future self, and I'm my own best friend, and doing that day in, day out, and being consistent with showing up for myself, not on stories or anything like that, just showing up for myself, just saying, you need to do that podcast episode. Get your stuff out, get that microphone out, sit down and record it. And once I'd done that and decided what I'm doing, Project Warrior Boss, everything started to line up, even though I was terrified, and it's worked out well. And it's exactly the same. We had another Vivid Club meetup on Saturday. And the first one in Coventry was beginning of July, was so good. But this one was even better. Now, I don't know whether, and actually we spoke about it a little bit at the event. We spoke about the fact that all the members had to pay for their space this time. In the one in July, I treated them all. I paid for it all. But this one, they had to pay for the ticket to come down. And I don't know, well, it is. It's like when you make that investment, when you say, I'm going to show up for myself, I'm going to put this money, I'm going to pay this money for myself, for my business. I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to show up for myself. It makes such a difference. The amount of things, I've done quite a lot of free things, I'm going to say them. And I do a lot on Instagram and stuff, but people just don't show up like they do when they've paid for it. It's a psychology thing. I don't know why. Why is that? But if it's a free thing, I sometimes just forget it's on. But if I've paid for something, I know it's on. It's in my calendar. I'm attending. And sometimes if you're not showing up for yourself, if it's a free thing, Maybe you just need to pay for something, and then you'll feel the benefit of it. Though I do understand, you know, at the moment the media is saying that nobody's got any money. It's yeah, you just need to make that decision. Right, I'm going to get back on my thread now, because I decided, you know, we did the first Coventry. I mean, I decided back in February, right, we're going to do a meet up for the Vivid Club, and I'm going to pay for it. And all of a sudden, we were meeting in Coventry, and we pulled it together, and had the slides, and I was hosting an event in real life, and it was so good. And then, literally, the 2 days after we arrived back from July, we were booking the second one, which was in Kent this time, because I live in Kent. And it was just so good. But it's just about moving forward. So if you're listening to this thinking, because she's going on a bit, if you're thinking about something and you're toing and froing about an idea, or maybe you're thinking about investing in something, maybe a piece of equipment for your business, or some training, or some coaching, or, I mean, not necessarily for me, there's amazing people out there as well. Maybe you just need to make that decision. Maybe you just need to go, do you know what? I'm deciding I'm worth this. I'm deciding I am making the decision that I am worth being a business owner. I am worth learning what my business could become. I'm worth learning about business and how to be a better version of myself, because I just deserve it. Once you make that decision, everything seems to sort of fall into place, and things can only go the right way. You know what I mean? I've had a definitely the last week I've been fighting being poorly. You know, when you're poorly, but you know that you haven't got any physical time to be poorly, and then you stop, and then you're just really ill. I'm like, I've been ill for 10 days, I think, and just waiting for it to kick in. Literally. I'm just sitting here like with a bit of a runny nose, like, are you going to get ill? Are you going to get ill or not? What's going on? But it's because I've got no time. But it was because today, I mean, I felt rough on Sunday. I'd given my all to the event. And then I woke up yesterday like, right, well, I've got to be better today, because I've got stuff I need to do. I've got Project Warrior Boss tomorrow. Then I've had Project Warrior Boss and the Warrior Workshops. And literally, as soon as I finished the Warrior Workshops, I started feeling poorly, like I've got a cold. It's like my body's gone, well, you've delivered that now, love. Here comes the snot. It literally is that. But I'm recording this podcast. I keep thinking, you know, like, I am actually recording a podcast. I'm just talking to myself. Imagine if you're just sitting here talking to yourself. God, what a load of nonsense this is, isn't it? So the moral of the story is, I'm going to cut this short now, because this may not be my best episode, but I've shown up a lot in the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to be compassionate with myself and think, do you know what? There's going to be some nugget of gold in here. And if that is, just make the decision, because no one's coming to do it for you. No one is showing up to do it for you. You've got to show up for yourself. Make that decision, decide to take action, and get on with it, whatever that is. If you did at all like this podcast, if there was any goodness in it at all, I feel bad because it's not a proper episode. But sometimes all you need is a little jolt in the right direction, just to decide, permission that you're okay to decide about taking the right steps, isn't it? But yeah, make that decision. Let me know how you get on. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, if there's any of you out there that enjoyed this random one, please subscribe, comment, review, share, all of the good stuff. I need to actually decide to get on with my podcast social media. It's one of them things that goes by the by, but it's a proper business. I need to run it. Podcast. I just love doing it so much. This is my hobby. Well, I'm going to go. This is absolute waffle. Hope you have an amazing day wherever you are. Take care of yourself and let me know what you decide to do. See you later. Thank you so much for listening to the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. Written, produced and hosted by Claire Hill, and music has been composed by my brother Bill Vidler.